Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Understanding and Building Your Emotional Intelligence. Well, I'm Scott Warwick, and that's the last time you're going to see me today. And I just wanted to point out here that you are listening to a video, or watching a video, I should say, and I have free videos posted on my website. If you just go to scottwarrick.com, that's SCOTTWARRICK, you will find a lot more information, not only about me and my books, but there are a lot of free videos there for you to watch to educate yourself and your people. And that's what I do. I work with people to help them do better. You will see this icon. This is my second book, Living the 5 Skills of Tolerance, a user's manual for today's world. And if you click onto that, you will find a bunch of Lunch and Learn videos posted. They're an hour long each, and they are there free for you and your people, plus a lot of other shorter and longer videos for you as well. You can also reach all of my free videos under this icon, Scott's Free HR Legal Podcasts. And you will find a lot of information on all kinds of different topics ready and waiting for you. Well, why don't we start as to why we're here? Or why are we here? All right, now look at this guy right there. I want you to take careful notice of what he is doing there. That is what we call a nuclear vasectomy. All right, now if you were with this guy out in the woods and you see him about to do this incredibly stupid thing, what would you tell him? Would you tell him to, hey, speed it up, we got to get going? Or would you say, stop, look at what you're doing? Okay, this is a huge mistake, but I got news for you. As bad as this might look, we can fix this. Yes, we can fix this. I mean, I promise you, as soon as that little chainsaw starts firing up and that first nick takes place, he's going to correct his behavior. I will tell you, we're going to look at some things in here today with emotional intelligence that if you don't get a handle on this, and if you don't look at what this really is, we can't fix that. And think about this, we could fix this. Some of the things that could happen to you, we cannot fix. So, where are we going today? I think it's a good Stephen Covey principle to start with the end in mind. So where are we going? We're heading down this trail. And where's that trail going to take us? Trust. Is it safe? And let me tell you, you cannot build trust with emotional children. And that right there is the summation of everything that you need to know about your employee relations and customer relations, by the way. And I just want you to mention as we're going through this, you do understand that emotional intelligence is a life skill. This is not something that you use just for employees. It's not something you use just for customers. It's not something that you use at home. It's something you use everywhere you go. And I'll tell you, if you're looking at emotional intelligence for your employees, remember, customer service is nothing but employee relations turned outward, and employee relations is nothing but customer service turned inward. And if you remember that, we're well on our way here. All right, so question 1, is it safe to come to work? Now, what's that mean? Is it safe from COVID? Is it safe that am I going to keep all my fingers and toes? And here's a big one. Is it safe to be different? Is it safe to be white? Is it safe to be black? Is it safe to be Asian? Is it safe to be transgender? Is it safe? Or is somebody going to bully me? You show me an intolerant person, I will show you an emotional child. Oh, and here's another one. Is it safe to disagree? If I disagree with you on something, like I am a big Bidenite, and a Trumpster comes and attacks me, that isn't safe. Or if I am a big Trump supporter and I've got my 2024 flag flying in my yard, which I see all over, is some Bidenite going to come and attack me? Is it safe? And that's where we're going today. Everything we're going to talk about with emotional intelligence leads to underdog. Is it safe? And that is trust. And let me tell you right now, if you cannot build trust in your organization, game over. You will not survive in the 21st century. And I am not kidding, because the Gen Zers and the Gen Yers, who are basically people under the age of 30 at this point right now, demand it. They demand to be heard. They demand their voice. And it had better be safe for them to voice their opinions. Now, they can't attack, but they have a right to voice their opinions. And I'll tell you, the baby boomers are dying and retiring. There are not enough Gen Zers and Gen Yers to replace the baby boomers. There are going to be a lot of companies in this next 5 so years who are going to go out of business because there were not enough people to hire. So this is not optional, folks. Pay attention. Emotional intelligence is the most important skill you will ever master in your life. Now, to make things easier, since 60% of the human brain is dedicated to vision, picture this baseball diamond. First base is emotional intelligence. And what we're going to look at is we're going to look at emotional intelligence in this program. And then in the next program, we're going to look at second base, which is resolving conflict. And that's with EPR, empathic listening, parroting, and rewards. And you combine the two, if you are an emotionally intelligent person who practices EPR, that makes you a verbal JEET master. That's what we call verbal JEET. Emotional intelligence and EPR. And I will tell you, the hardest thing you will ever do in your life, ever, is making it to first base. Emotional intelligence. Most people fail. And you'll see why. We're not wired for this. All right, we are wired to go to fight or flight, and we are wired to get divorced and fired. So what is emotional intelligence? Very simple. Can you control your ego and emotions? And let me tell you, that is the hardest thing you will ever do. And you never entirely get there. I always like this when you hear somebody, well, such and such is an emotionally intelligent person and they never lose control. That is not true. That means they are not human. But they get better, and they get better, and they get better. That's why coaching is so important. Now, why is controlling your emotions and ego so important? For self-control. First and foremost, if you cannot control yourself, if you are an emotional child, cannot control your ego and emotion, then you cannot resolve conflict. And I will tell you right now, when you cannot resolve conflict, address it and resolve it, then disaster strike. That is critical to everyone's life. And building relationships. Building relationships is key to any position. And I just love this because I have had folks, like folks in IT that I've had in class. And we're going through this seminar. I'm teaching a seminar on site. I had this IT guy that said, this really isn't important. I don't have any real contact with customers. And I just looked at him and smiled and said, you mean to tell me that you don't have any interface at all with users? And he just looked at me. He said, well, the people here inside the organization. And I said, yeah. Aren't they your customers? Customer service is nothing but employee relations turned outward and vice versa. And I will tell you right now, there is a huge issue with building relationships and communication in this country. Now, the number one factor that we're talking about, how successful you are going to be and how happy you are going to be, is your emotional quotient, your EQ, not your IQ. And I am going to show you, as your IQ rises, as your titles increase, as the amount of money you make increases, your emotional intelligence tends to drop like a rock. We don't want that to happen because remember, that is worse than our friend who is trying to give himself a vasectomy with a chainsaw. That is worse. Now, let's look at this for what it is. Have we evolved? Now, don't get all angry with me, because I get a lot of folks, emotional children, who just cannot wait to attack. Now, think about this, folks. I am saying we have not evolved. We have not evolved. All right, so I'll tell you right now. 5,000 years ago, where you're sitting right now, someone like Fred Flintstone lived. Okay? It was 5,000 years ago. Now, if you happen to be an evolutionist, you understand that man stopped evolving 10 to 50,000 years ago. So 5,000 years ago, humans lived right here. And when I say evolution, I am saying that our strand of DNA has changed. Now, we're bigger and faster and stronger today, but that's because of diet, living conditions, all medical care, all the types of things that we have today. Okay? Now, let's say you're a creationist. Well, if you're a creationist, you think the world is 5,600 years old. So guess what? Everybody is in agreement. 5,000 years ago, Fred Flintstone lived right here. Now get this. We have not evolved in 5,000 years. Have our surroundings evolved? Yeah, absolutely. When Fred left the hut every day, he had a couple of big concerns. Getting enough to eat. And even more importantly, not getting eaten. Now, think about this, folks. Did you realize that you are food? You're food. You are food. If you're attacked by a saber-toothed tiger or a bear or a lion, look at your claws. All right? Are you going to claw it? Could you outrun it? Maybe you could wrestle a bear. You don't have any horns. You don't have any antlers. You don't have any claws. You don't have any teeth. Nothing. What is the one thing that humans have that is unique and different from every other animal on the planet? And please don't say thumbs. Monkeys have thumbs. What's different about us? Our brains. Our brains. And I'll tell you right now, our brains are wired in a very different way. We are wired for fight or flight, but we also have a logical brain. But I'll tell you right now, our fight or flight response is to attack or to run away. And I'll tell you, the humans who lived here 5,000 years ago who did not have this fight or flight response, they're not here. They were eaten. And that brings truth to the old saying, I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than you. You see, people like you and I, our ancestors, we would see a bear or a tiger and we would run, okay, or get ready to fight. What would these other people do? They would stand there and they'd look at it and they'd say, I wonder what the best thing to do would be. And by then, they're food. So this begs the question, which is stronger? Our logical brain or our emotional brain? And if you look at the graphic here, you see basically the big guy, the sumo guy, that's our emotional brain. And the little guy there, that's our logical brain. So let me ask you, are we primarily logical people or emotional people? Well, let's take a look and see what happens in your body when you go into fight or flight. Well, this is you. This is all of us. So at step one, a stimulus, some conflict is going to come into your head. And we'll talk about that center of the brain here in just a little bit. But in 17 thousandths of a second, it is going to shoot an emergency signal down that blue cord. That is your vagus nerve. And your vagus nerve has one primary responsibility: keep you alive. And so it's going to shoot that message of danger down the vagus nerve to step number 2, your kidneys. Now you see what's sitting on top of your kidneys there? Those are 2 little dunce caps. Those are your adrenal glands, and they are going to release massive amounts of adrenaline and cortisol into your body. Now, think about it. Massive amounts of adrenaline. What is that adrenaline going to do to your heart rate? To step number 3. It's going to increase it. And let me just give you a little tidbit here. You can increase your heart rate 10 to 30 beats in one heartbeat. Just one. Okay, that's amazing. Why? Because you think you're getting eaten. You think something's going to eat you. So you got to move. So that is going to speed up your heart rate substantially. And when your heart rate hits 145 beats per minute, you go into full fight or flight. That means you start to get short of breath because the blood has automatically been rerouted to your lungs. The blood also goes to your arms and legs as well. So your arms, legs, and lungs are now getting the lion's share of the blood in your system. What happens next? If your heart rate keeps going, according to the University of North Carolina, you become what we call temporarily autistic. What's that mean? Your heart rate has hit 175 beats per minute, so you go on autopilot. It's almost a surreal type of experience, an out-of-body experience, where you don't have control over your body anymore. You're like watching it move. And you hear somebody say this all the time where they say, I just don't know what came over me, when they get really upset and go off on some tangent, or when they punch a wall, or kick their car. Oh, I don't remember even doing that. Yeah, you know why? Because you're human. Heart rate is going to control your body. So now think about this. The blood automatically went to your arms and legs and lungs. You didn't make any more blood. Where did it leave? Your brain. Your brain. Your brain impaired. That is what happens when you go into fight or flight. But that's the way our body is designed. Because remember, 5,000 years ago, Fred Flintstone had to fight or flight for his life. It wasn't important to have blood to your brain. It was important to have all the blood to your arms and legs and lungs, or what you could spare. Now, this is a nuclear SPECT scan. And actually, that's my brain in 2008. I've had a few brain scans, and this is not an MRI. This is a nuclear SPECT scan. And that is basically watching your brain function. It's a functional exam. We're watching the blood literally flow in and out of your brain. Okay, an MRI is a structural exam. It looks the same on a live person as it does a dead one. Well, this is a functional exam. So blood flow, that's important, isn't it? I mean, if you don't have good blood flow to your brain, it isn't going to work. Well, that's my brain on the far left. That's me at rest. All right, so you're looking through the underside of my chin to the underside of my brain. I'm looking up to the ceiling in the machine, so that's my forehead. From here up, that line across there, those are my frontal lobes. That's what we use to think. That's our logical center, and we're very proud of our frontal lobes. We hang certificates and degrees and all licenses and stuff on our walls to show people, see how good my frontal lobes are? Look how good those things are working. Okay, now, you don't need your frontal lobes to live. You need them to think. You don't need them to live. And so your body knows that. So when it needs blood, when it needs extra blood, guess where it takes the blood from first? Well, look at the scan on the far right. That's me. That's also me. That's my brain. But you see the two holes in the frontal lobes? Now, those aren't really holes. What is that? That shows that the blood has left my frontal lobes. Where did it go? It went to my arms and legs and lungs. Why? Because I'm mad. They got me all ticked off. So how do they do that? Well, you play the equivalent of this little game where you try to catch all the gold coins. Okay, and it's very frustrating and you get upset and you can't get it and you get really upset. So they then put you in the machine once they get you good and torqued off. Look at the holes. This is an active scan. And where did the blood go? My arms and legs and lungs. What kind of decisions do you think you're going to make with 2 holes in your head? Bad decisions. So, this is the way all of us are wired. All of us. So we're all humans are wired this way. Okay, so all I need to know is that you're human. And your frontal lobes, there they are. We pride ourselves on those. But look at the amygdalas. Okay, we just discovered the amygdalas in 1992 by a guy by the name of Dr. Joseph Ledoux. Those control our entire fight or flight system. Our entire fight or flight system. Okay, the little gold ball sitting above it, that's your limbic system, your emotional system. Okay, and as you hear me talk right now, everything goes into your thalamus, into your limbic system, that little gold ball first. It then spins out to where it needs to go. That's basically your neural junction box, just like the electrical box in your house. Well, look where your amygdalas are located. They're right next to your thalamus. It takes 17 thousandths of a second to get a stimulus into your thalamus. Look where your frontal lobes are. They're 6 blocks down the street. And they drain of blood. So they don't work when you go into fight or flight. Your amygdalas always have a nice, healthy blood supply. Why? Because if you lose a blood supply to your thalamus, to the center of your brain, and to your amygdalas, you're dead. Now, this is a diagram of you hearing what I'm talking about right now if I was threatening you, okay? If a danger's coming in. So a stimulus comes into your brain, hits your thalamus, and boom, right into your amygdalas in 17 thousandths of a second. That is lightning, way before your logical center even knows what's going on. So everybody tell me, what's this guy's job? The guy in the yellow shirt, what's his job? Well, he's supposed to be keeping the peace, right? And what is he doing? Well, it looks to me like he's trying to kill Mr. Spiky Head, right? Now, I'm quite sure Mr. Spiky Head said something to him. Absolutely. And what happens? Mr. Peace Team explodes and starts to go over the fence to get him. That is a mistake. Because look how long it takes that exact same stimulus to get to your frontal lobes. It takes 2 or 3 times longer. Has anybody ever told you that you are slow-witted? All humans are slow-witted. Emotionally, we're fast like lightning. But logically, oh no. And let me show you how fast you really are. Okay, we're all going to do this exercise together. So show you how lightning speed you can move. We're all going to say the word white together 10 times. We're all going to say it together 10 times. Then I'm going to ask you a question and see how you answer. Okay, so this is a group exercise. So everybody all together, we're going to say the word white on my count. Ready? White, 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 white. What do cows drink? Cows drink water, right? Cows don't drink milk. And I didn't say baby calves. Cows drink water. And I'll tell you, if you can get a picture of a bull drinking milk from a cow, I will buy that from you. Okay? You know that. You know the difference. Here's what I didn't tell you. A couple things. I did tell you how fast your amygdalas are, much faster than your logical brain, but I didn't tell you that your amygdalas have a memory system all their own. They have a memory system all their own. and they control what you do. Welcome to implicit bias, or your subconscious, or part of your subconscious. So what's the answer? Slow down and think. Slow down. There is no possible way that your frontal lobes can be faster or even keep up with your emotional system. You see, this is why your first reaction in a conflict is always wrong. It's always wrong. This is also why we are hardwired to get divorced and fired. Because of conflict, we can't address and resolve conflict. Unless your life is in danger, your first reaction to a conflict is wrong. Like for instance, let's say you're driving on the highway and you're having a typical day, you're in your lane, and someone else comes over into your spot while you're still there. If you don't get out of there, you're going to crash. So it's amazing. With lightning speed, you can look in your rear view mirror, you can look in your side view mirror, and you can swerve out of the way into safety. Very fast, lightning. Now your life really is in danger. So Fred Flintstone's brain just saved you. Yeah, in those situations, oh yeah, you got to move, your reactions will save you. But the rest of the time, like when somebody's arguing with you, or when maybe accounting comes down shaking your expense report in your face, or somebody's calling you names, slow down and think, or you could be the end of yourself. So what's the answer? The difference between success and failure is 5 seconds. 5 seconds. That is usually the difference between whether you're going to end your life or be successful. Because that's how long it takes your frontal lobes to catch up. Give your frontal lobes a chance to control your emotional reactions, or it will be bad for you. Absolutely. So, let's give you another exercise, and I'm going to show you how powerful your frontal lobes really are. The word this time we're all going to say together is joke. So we're all going to say the word joke together 10 times. And again, it's a group participation thing. We're all going to say the word joke 10 times. And then I'm going to ask you a question, but nobody's going to say anything for 5 seconds. You let your frontal lobes catch up with your amygdalas. All right, so all together, group participation, the word is joke. Ready? Joke, 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 joke. What do you call the white part of the egg? Don't say anything. Let it cook. Okay, what do you call the white part of the egg? Well, the egg white. Shell. Some of you folks always like to put in there ovalbumin. Yeah, okay, that all works. How many people really wanted to say yolk? Well, that would have been wrong, wouldn't it? Okay, I'll tell you right now, unless your life is in danger, take that 5 seconds and let your frontal lobes control you, not your emotional system, or it will be your undoing one day. It will be your undoing. And yes, we are all human. And you know what that means? We are all emotional children. We are hardwired to get divorced and fired. We are hardwired to always be wrong in a conflict in the 21st century. When we do not slow down and think, we all turn into evil 3-year-old versions of ourselves. Why? Because we are born with our fight or flight response and our emotional system. Babies laugh, babies cry. That means those systems, our thalamus and our amygdalas, are ready to go from the time we're born. But no one remembers being born. Nobody remembers much anything in their first 3.5 years of life. Why? Because you don't have a short-term memory transmitter, your hippocampus. You don't have a conscious memory system. It doesn't exist. So everything that you hear, see, taste, and smell goes into your subconscious, which today we call implicit bias. So, how do you get control of that? First and foremost, slow down and think. You've got to get control of your emotional system. And if you don't do that, you will turn into an evil 3-year-old version of yourself, and the chances somebody will record you doing something stupid is about 100%. And or that you will absolutely end your career. Yes, 80 to 90% of all of your success is what we're talking about right here. Does that sound like I'm exaggerating? Well, what about doctors? I mean, surgeons. Think about this. Some of the most highly revered people in our society. 4 years of undergraduate study, 4 years of medical college, 3 some years of internship and residency, and then a residency on top of that if you're going to be a surgeon. I mean, these truly are brilliant people. Wouldn't you think after all of that education, you would know your left from your right? I mean, I don't think you have to go to medical college to understand where your right hand is and your left hand is. But think about this. Every month in America, there are 2 wrong site surgeries. Now, what does that mean? It means some doctor, some surgeon cut into the wrong leg, the wrong arm, the wrong elbow, something. Now, think about why that is. Everybody in the surgical suite, doctors, nurses, x-ray techs, anesthesiologists, all of these licensed professionals in the surgical suite, they are required to agree, verbally speak and agree that the doctor or surgeon is cutting into the right limb, right? So how is it that twice a month they get that wrong? Everybody in the surgical suite mistakes the left from the right hand side? Really? How does that happen? Because too many surgeons are emotional children. They got too big for their britches. I mean, think about it. Are you in this surgical suite? Are you going to speak up? Are you going to correct a doctor who thinks that MD stands for minor deity? Really? I had a doctor once, a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, where a nurse spoke up and questioned if he was making the right incision, and he threw his scalpel at her. And I'll tell you right now, scalpels are made to cut people. And you throw a scalpel at somebody, I'll tell you, I think that surgeon should come in, whether he or she is an independent contractor or employee, and there are going to be some serious consequences. If you do not put some consequences in there, everybody's going to know that doctor can do whatever he or she wants. Think about this. Is it safe to go into that surgical suite? Now, clearly, when they're throwing scalpels at you, I think the answer to that is no. But on top of that, is it safe to speak up? And the answer to that is no. I'll tell you right now, if you're ever going to have any limb operated on, get a marker and write on the opposite limb, wrong arm. Don't cut this one. That's why they have so many checks and double checks and triple checks before you go into surgery, because the doctors or surgeons are emotional children. People are not going to speak up and correct that surgeon. This is what I was talking about. As your IQ rises, as your title increases, as your degrees increased, our emotional intelligence tends to drop like a rock. And that comes from Harvard. Harvard says that your titles and degrees and IQ tend to work against you because you like to wave them in front of everybody. No, that will become your undoing. And I'll tell you, people can increase their emotional intelligence. Absolutely. But this is the toughest thing you'll ever do, because you've got to admit that there's some things you're doing wrong. There's some things you need to improve in. And I'll tell you, the degree to which you improve is directly related to how much pain you can take. This is a lot like going to physical therapy. They're going to find out what hurts and they're going to twist it and push it. And I'll tell you, the vast majority of people in our society can't take the pain. This is not for pansies. This is for tough people. Now let me show you somebody who is not a tough person. This is Mark. And Mark was the CEO or administrator of a hospital here in Ohio. And this hospital was hemorrhaging tens and tens of millions of dollars a year. Well, how could the CEO cost you tens of millions of dollars? Easy. He is a child. He's a child screaming and yelling and abusing people on a daily basis. Now, these are his EQ scores, and I was brought in by the board to evaluate him and talk to him. Now, he looked at these scores, and he thought they were great. Oh, my assertiveness, independence, all this, I am just superior. And he is. He truly is superior when it comes to those things. But look at his empathy. Look at his reality, his impulse control. He has none. You want all of your scores to be within 10 points of each other. And 100 is average. Well, he's 20 points below average in some of these scores. And in empathy to his independence and assertiveness, there's a 40-point swing. So guess what? We don't want to lower his assertiveness. We want to bring up his empathy. You want all your scores to be as even as possible so they're smooth. They support each other. It's a lot like sliding down a banister. You want to choose a banister that is nice and smooth. Which banister would you choose? The one on the right or the one on the left? Well, the one on the left takes us back to, a nuclear vasectomy again. And I can tell you, we can fix that. We cannot fix what happened to Mark. Now, think about this. His style. He's setting the example. He's setting the tone. It isn't safe. So he turned over his executive team 3 times in 7 years. And nurses, x-ray techs, staff are quitting by the droves. They hate this environment because of what he spreads. And think about it. If I've got a nurse who is making $25 to $30 an hour, to get a temporary nurse to come in, we're talking maybe $70, $80, $85 an hour. Well, he never improved, didn't want to improve, so he went from making $500,000 a year to $582 a week on unemployment. And he is an employment leper. No one will touch him. Now here's Penny. Okay, now this doesn't look half bad, but Penny has alienated her entire staff. She smiles to their face, but then stabs them in the back when they're not around, and is very, very difficult to work with, particularly if you have a family. Now Penny is in her mid-50s, lives alone, has 3 cats or so. Her big idea of a great Saturday night is sitting at home with her cats, getting a pizza, and looking through the new tax changes. She is the director of tax in an accounting firm. Well, her assertiveness is 134. That's genius. But look at her interpersonal relationships. She does not build relationships with people. She builds relationships with cats and the tax code. There's about a 40-point swing there. All right, so I'll tell you, this took about This took about 3 hours. A lot of crying, and she was terribly upset. I even had to tell her, I said, you cause such dissension and instill such fear that it's not safe to voice your opinion or to have an issue at home. That last year, when you had your hip replaced, production went up. Your people actually did better when you weren't here. They actually talked about pitching in and buying you another hip. Oh, she took this really, really hard, but I'll tell you, she really took it to heart and she improved. She focused on building her interpersonal relationships. She focused on resolving conflict and talking to people. And look at her scores 2 years later. Now let's look at the combined. Look at the difference. Little adjustments made a huge difference. And I'll tell you, very, very successful person to this day. So why don't we take a look at this checklist that identifies someone who is an emotional child. I'll tell you, this is a critical checklist to keep near and dear to your heart. First of all, so you don't do it. That's the first thing. Second thing, you can identify someone who is acting like an emotional child immediately. Now, first and foremost, they cannot control their emotions and ego. Number 2, they dismiss any opinions that disagree with theirs. Number 3, they have little or no empathy for others. Number 4, they're mind blind. Number 5, they reward bootlickers. Number 6, they micromanage other people. And number 7, they suppress or escalate conflict. They do not resolve it. And we're going to look through this and give you examples of each and every one of these pitfalls so that you can recognize them when they happen. So let's take a more in-depth look at these pitfalls of low emotional intelligence. Now here's the first one. Obviously, someone who cannot control their emotions and ego. And that's Napoleon on your far right there. Okay, and we'll talk in the next hour session about attackers and retreaters. But look at that guy. Look at it. That is how he dressed for his portrait. What kind of narcissist dresses like that? Okay, they base their decisions and reactions on ego and emotion at 17 thousandths of a second. So their logical brain never kicks in. They rush to judgment without looking at any of the facts. Like Napoleon invading Russia. Now there's a good idea. Even if you defeat their army, you will never defeat their winter. So they cannot communicate in conflict situations due to their uncontrolled ego and emotions. And it was his undoing. Just like it was for Hitler. In the end, this emotional child, his reactionary approach destroyed the trust everywhere. No one around him would speak up. So others clam up and critical decision-making disappears. This is exemplified when Eisenhower had our troops land in Normandy on D-Day. Well, it was early in the morning, and I'll tell you, Hitler was asleep. Now think about this. They had several panzer divisions just a little ways north in Calais. He should have ordered those panzer divisions to come down and attack our troops. Thank God he didn't, because he was asleep. And are you going to wake up the crazy Fuhrer? No, it worked out to our advantage that the Axis was led by a maniacal narcissist. And this is exemplified by Kodak. Now think your way through this, folks. Kodak, in the early 1980s, the engineers invented the digital processor. They were first. Now at that time, Kodak, which a lot of you, I'm sure, have never heard of Kodak, so it's a good thing for you to Google. Kodak was like a Fortune 10 company. It made its money selling film. They pretty much gave the cameras away and sold the film because people are always coming back for film. Now, here are these engineers coming in talking to the older people who ran Kodak little too big for their britches. And they were told, hey, we've got to stop making film. We got to start looking into these digital processors because one day there will not be any dark rooms anymore. There will not be film anymore. Now freeze right there. You are a very important leader at Eastman Smith Kodak. All right. How dare these young whippersnappers come in and tell us this? So these engineers were attacked. That's your little devil attacker on the left, and on the right, passive aggressive. They were squeezed out. Okay. Kodak missed the chance to be first to the market with the digital processor. So where do you think these engineers went? Nikon, Canon, Minolta. And to this day, you cannot buy a good American digital camera. They do not exist. And Kodak is a little blip in the history of photography. So, let me ask you, do the facts only get in the way of a good opinion? Well, for the emotional child, yes. Yes. They dismiss any opinions that disagree with theirs. Well, they cannot admit their own mistakes, and so they will not accept feedback. So guess what? They cannot improve. When things go wrong, they blame everyone else, rather than trying to correct the situation. They adopt a my way or the highway mentality. Perfect for groupthink. It will be your undoing, folks. If you have not read or listened to the book Good to Great, this is a must read and listen. Absolutely. This is a phenomenal book. And they're level 5 leaders, the best leaders in the world. They are saying they have a common trait in that they all adopt a mirror versus window mentality. Well, what's that mean? It means when things go well, the emotionally intelligent, great leaders look out the window and they give all the praise to their people. When things go wrong, the emotionally intelligent, great leaders look into the mirror and say, what should I have done differently? What should I have done differently? You see the difference. Mirror versus window makes you a great leader. And this is a critical pitfall you will see every day of your life. And you don't want to do it. Little or no empathy for others. Empathy, being able to see somebody else's point of view and relate to them, is critical. The Machiavellians in the world do not do that. And you will see a very common trait among emotional children is they do this all the time. All the time. Actually, when you look at a lot of emotional children's EQ scores, their emotional intelligence scores, usually very low in empathy and relationship building. Why? Because we don't value that. We value the John Wayne, grab him by the nose, kick him in the pants mentality. Empathy is a skill. And what's that mean? You've got to be able to see the perspective of others, to hear others' opinions. But somebody who has no empathy doesn't care. They're very self-centered. They manipulate others for their own ends. They cannot build trusting relationships with others because they cannot see other people's point of view. That is empathy. Now, I've already shown you a pitfall. I love this because you put these things out there and you see all the time that we trip on these things. I love to use as a symbol of trust, Underdog. Now, there's a few reasons for that. One is I grew up with Underdog, but he was off the air in 1965. So he has not been around for a long time, okay? But I always hear this, and I hear this from a lot of younger folks. It's like, well, you know, your slides are outdated. One consultant told me, oh, you should really freshen up your slides. I like that, freshen them up, like spray Glade on them or something like this. And my response is, oh, you didn't recognize Underdog? And they always laugh and they say, no, I was born in 1980. I was born in 1990. I was born in 2000. Okay. So let me ask you, do you think the things that happened before you matter? Do you think you should educate yourself as to what maybe happened before you were here? And I got news for you. There are a few things in this world that happened before you got here. So if I show a slide that is old, or I show something that's new, and maybe it's new and the younger folks get it, but the older ones don't, does that mean I should choose only programs and slides that everybody can relate to? Here's the answer. Get off your ego. It's not all about you. That is narcissistic behavior. Go and look it up. It's not all about you. And I love this because I'll hear somebody say, well, you got to know your audience. Really? I got 40, 50, or 100, 300, 500 people out there. Is there any way you could put something up there that they all know? How much ego do you have? You're getting too big for your britches. So let's change it up. Let's use something much more modern. Much more modern. Does anybody recognize who this is? One of the most popular animated characters in the world. Well, that's Naruto. Okay? And of course, oh, that's Japanese cartoons. And you hear people say, well, yeah, but that's Japanese. We shouldn't necessarily know that. Really? Anime in the United States has over 107 million fans. That's 1/3 of everybody. You mean you are not familiar with something that 1/3 of all America praises? Of course you aren't. If you don't know who this is, it's not all about you. You might want to go learn something. Don't blame other people because something you don't know. And I love this one because some folks are big country western fans and some people are not. Well, does anybody recognize who this is? That's Mickey Guyton. She is a country western star. Well, okay, so guess what? The rock and roll people don't know who she is, but I'll tell you, I could give you 100 examples, and I want you to really keep an eye out for this pitfall. Well, what's that? I don't understand that. Well, now you're just waving your ignorance around for everybody to see, aren't you? And we're all ignorant. Depending on what we're talking about, that, change the topic, that determines how ignorant you are. That's why we have Google. That's why we have resources to learn about things. That shows a total lack of empathy for other people and the fact that you think that everything should be geared towards you. No, not at all. Mind blind. Oh, this is a fun one, right? And these are the folks that you see on news or that you work with every day. Now, mind blind. They don't realize the destructive impact they have on others, or they realize it and don't care. They're like Pepe Le Pew. And Pepe Le Pew wanders through the building, wanders through the organization, giving off this horrendous stink. They think they smell great. Everybody else thinks, oh my gosh, this is awful. Oh, this is terrible. Now let's look at our wall of shame, and our wall of shame is getting bigger by the day. I just added Andrew Cuomo, and I just love this, where he gets up and denies everything. And I will tell you right now, I have conducted dozens of investigations for sexual harassment across the years, dozens of them, and other types of investigations. I got news for you, folks. When you can line up 11 people whose stories corroborate and who don't know each other, that's the truth. That is the truth. If I played telephone with 5 of them and gave them a common message, it would fall apart by the time we got to the 4th or 5th person. And of course, it's not just Andrew. There you got Harvey Weinstein. Talk about somebody too big for his britches. $250 million this guy is worth, and so he thought he could do whatever he wanted to do. Mind blind. He probably knew the harm he was causing these women, and he didn't care. And of course, you got Matt Lauer. That's another one. Old creepy Charlie Rose, who used to walk around the set naked. That's a new one. Oh, and up in your upper right corner, if you do not know who this is, fine. Google him. That is Gary Hart. Gary Hart. And he was caught having an affair on his boat called, believe it or not, the Monkey Business. Yes, that's Gary Hart. And if you don't know who Gary Hart is, Google him and you will find out if it wasn't for this affair and Gary Hart falling from grace, you would have never heard of Bill Clinton. Now, I have truly been waiting for this one. They love bootlickers. They reward bootlickers. They love people who agree with them. So they surround themselves with these bootlickers. Groupthink is the norm, with disastrous results. And this is just a fantastic example of Kim Jong-un. Can you imagine anyone telling him that that's a good haircut? Oh, yeah, Jong-un, that looks great. Oh, yeah, I'm going to get one for me and the kids. There is no way in the world that that's a good-looking haircut. But did you see what happened to his uncle who disagreed with him? Fed his uncle to dogs, was eaten alive. So guess what? You get a reputation for that. Yeah, boss, that's a good-looking haircut. Now here's a fun one. They micromanage other people. They believe no one can do anything as well as they can. So they build very little trust. Or they don't increase the abilities of other people. Why? Because if you want it done right, you do it yourself. The art of management is to get other people to willingly do what you want them to do. Oh no, this is a disaster. If you think that you're the best one at everything and nobody else can do it, fine. Go back to being a technician. You should never supervise people. Your job as a leader, as a manager, is to develop people. But narcissists don't do that. Actually, narcissists love it when they leave the organization and the organization falls apart because you just can't live without me. Go back to the Good to Great book. You want a real life example? Lee Iacocca. Not so great. All right, so now everybody's, if you study business at all, I'm sure you've heard of Lee Iacocca, right? Designed the Ford Mustang, then pulled Chrysler out of bankruptcy by his teeth. He was a great performer, fantastic, but he could not stand to have anybody around him who challenged him, who spoke their mind. So he surrounded himself with bootlickers. And he micromanaged everything. He took control of everything, which was very successful for Chrysler. But that's not his job. His job is to be a leader, to develop other people. But his ego couldn't take it. And when he left Chrysler, he left a huge void. No one could step up and replace him. And what happened? Chrysler fell to the Germans. I always love this because they announced Daimler Chrysler, this is a merger. No, it's not. Daimler ate Chrysler. And then Chrysler tasted so bad to Daimler, he spit him out. And several years later, Chrysler died again, and they're no longer Chrysler. And the final one. They either suppress or escalate conflict, which in the next program, we're going to look at attackers and retreaters. These people do not resolve conflict. What do? Well, like Aunt Bee, and you'll learn who Aunt Bee is here in the next program. On the far left, oh, she's a nice person. She would never say anything to upset you. So she waits until you leave. And I want you to notice the little evil 3-year-old child on her forehead. So nothing ever gets addressed, and everything falls apart. And of course, you've got Simon Cowell, or the stereotypical Simon Cowell. I don't personally know him, but I see the TV persona. He attacks. All right, and how do people respond when you attack them? They attack back. Or they take on terrorist tactics, and they become passive aggressives and get you later. These folks enable bullying behavior in your organization. Yes, if you have emotional children running your organization, you will be filled with bullies. It won't be safe. It isn't safe to speak up because in the end, emotional children create a very combative environment that kills trust. And in the future, in the 21st century, you will not survive. Because no one, or very few people, are going to want to work for you. So I hope you notice that you see these pitfalls all the time. All right, so you see people all around you that cannot control their emotions and ego. They dismiss any opinions that disagrees with theirs. They have little or no empathy for other people. They're mind blind. They reward bootlickers. They micromanage other people. And they suppress or escalate conflict. They do not resolve it. And let me tell you, if you cannot address and resolve conflict, you cannot be in management. And if you are practicing any one of these pitfalls, you cannot be in management. Period.